Welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. And we are back again with the most sciencey guy in the earth and sky, Rich Soule. And as you all know, I do a lot of shows about woo, but I am not by any means providing lopsided information, because when I can get somebody that's got some actual science on Bigfoot on the show, I want them on just as much, if not more, than I want the woo people on, to give you the complete package, the total picture of these Sasquatch phenomena. And there's no one better at elucidating on this phenomena than the phenomenal Rich Soule, the creator and main man of the Nox Gigas Project, who not only knows a lot about the science of Sasquatch, but also knows a lot about the paranormal aspects of Sasquatch. So this is the perfect guy to have on for this subject. And before I continue on with the show and give him more accolades, I'd like to give some accolades to the BMR Brigade. You guys are amazing. BMR, thanks for trying to rally some help to my side. I really appreciate it. A bunch of your listeners did rally to my aid. And once again, thank you guys. You're amazing. And also thanks to my regular co-producers, without which I could not be bringing the show to you. And sorry for holding you up any more than that. Let's get to the amazing Rich Soule, the soul man of Sasquatch himself. Here he is.
Duke, good times. Thanks for having me. If you could see, I'm blushing with everything you said about me. So
really, I just figured you were outside, got a windburn or something.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. And you know, tonight we're going to talk about Eyeglow, which is something I know quite a bit about. And we're gonna talk about the mechanism behind it. And I also wanted to talk about briefly, though, kind of an update on Muke 7E, which is what I had proposed as a DNA marker for the world's hominids. And back in October, Svante Pabo won the Nobel Prize in Science for his work in the paleogenome. And if people are aware of him, that's a really big deal, because he started his own kind of branch of science, and it was around the Neanderthal, basically the bones that were found. It was a finger, I believe. There were some small bones, and they were able to do the genome for the Neanderthal and Denisovian. And so he's known for that. He was given the Nobel Prize for that. And it's a really big deal because it kind of parallels the research I was doing. So I wanted to briefly kind of overview what Muke 7E is. And for those of you who have never heard this theory, I propose it as the DNA marker for all the world's hominids. And Muke 7E is essentially the protein that is in our mucus system. So Muke 7 is inherent in Homo sapiens and also Neanderthal and Denisovian. The Muke 7 is that protein that is for bacteria, and it helps the body to fight bacteria. So it adheres to bacteria, and it's called Muke 7. In sub-Saharan Africa, they identified an outlier called Muke 7E, and that actually is not congruent with Muke 7, with Homo sapiens, or with Neanderthal or Denisovian. It's an outlier. And when I identified that back in 2018, I believed that that would be our DNA marker that we could use for the world's hominids. So essentially, the hominid that is carrying that has interbred with Neanderthal, they've interbred with Denisovian, and they've interbred with Homo sapien. And if you know about DNA, a lot of the stuff that happened with the Bigfoot community is that there is DNA tested and it tends to be kind of washed out, that it's either Homo sapien or it's something else. Muke 7 would help identify it because it actually is a DNA marker that is an outlier, and it's identified in sub-Saharan Africa, which is the population that Dr. Sykes identified with Zana. So it's a marker. If there's 1% is chimpanzee difference than us, I'm thinking these hominids could be 1% of 1% or 0.5%. They're going to be a lot less percentage difference than us, than even chimpanzees when you look at them on the DNA. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up because it was very significant that Svante Pabo got his got credit for the research that he's done. And there's going to be more with these algorithms, and science is absolutely finding ways to bring this DNA to fruition. So one of it's going to be the bones. We don't need a body, even just a little bit of a bone will help us. But having this DNA marker could be used as a way to do field research in environmental DNA.
Okay, now let me cut you off there just to be clear on this whole subject. There are no humans running around the planet carrying this DNA marker.
No, this is unique. Muke 7E is unique to a progenitor of this marker, and when it is found in people, it's from this archaic hominid. It's unique. They found it in a few populations of sub-Saharan Africans, similar to what we have when we have Neanderthal DNA in Europeans. It's found in populations of Europeans. You still have remnant Neanderthal DNA. Well, right. This remnant DNA of Muke 7E was an integration that I believe was by this progenitor, this hominid that interbred with Homo sapien and Neanderthal, Denisovian, and you're going to find an admixture of all those in the Yowie, the Yeren, the Sasquatch, and the Yeti. And one of the examples I used for the Yeti was the Denisovian. When they did the Denisovian DNA, we know they were able to, the Sherpas inherited at high altitude the ability to be in high altitude, low oxygen environments from the Denisovian population. So if we had this Muke 7E progenitor and it interbred with Denisovian, it could theoretically be the Yeti in Nepal, in the Himalayas.
Ahoo! I'm here at Big Elk Park on the Omaha Res today, and we're getting ready to do a expedition for the Facebook group Res Squatching. So we're just getting started. We're going to have dinner here shortly, but I wanted to visit a little bit about some of the evidence over the years that I have presented. I recently had gotten some feedback from some family members that it would be good if I tried to simplify MUK7E that I had proposed, the theory on how that relates to all of the world's hominids. So I'm going to try to simplify that today. Essentially, when you do DNA, when you spit into the little tube that you're given, that mucus has a protein in it that's called Muke7, and that protein is unique to all Homo sapiens, including hominids, Neanderthal, and Denisovian. Within that protein, Muke7, it has a sticky consistency, and that allows it to fight bacteria. So that's the purpose of it. When study was done in 2017 regarding this protein Muke7, there was a population identified in sub-Saharan Africa, and there hadn't been a whole lot of DNA studies done in Africa. So that was why this was done. They did isolate this Muke7E and find that it was an outlier, and it existed within sub-Saharan Africa, similar to what Neanderthal did with Europeans. There was an introgression, which means there was a mating that occurred in ancient times, historical times, that occurred maybe 1,000, 10,000 years ago. And in that, there was this Neanderthal DNA in Europeans, Denisovian, and like the Sherpas of Himalaya. We're seeing that in Asian populations also, the Denisovian. So this is unique in sub-Saharan Africa, that this population had a introgression into their DNA, and their Muke7, which was different. It was wildly different than the Muke7 that is within Homo sapien, and Neanderthal and Denisovian. So this is what I found very interesting when I read this study, and I wound up tying it to Zana in Russia. And Zana was a captive hominid that had been clubbed, and she was very young, and she was caught in the Georgia region of Russia, and she was taken passed along to various noblemen, and she wound up with Geneva, a nobleman who took her in, and wound up through procreating with her, and having offspring. Several of the men in the village that he lived. The DNA from Zana then was carried on to her descendants, and that DNA held sub-Saharan Africa DNA when that was studied in 2013 by Dr. Sykes. So that's what led me to sub-Saharan Africa, and led me to the study eventually that came up with this Muke7E protein. Now, I have taken that Muke7E and expanded on it as an emergent hominid theory, explaining that this was a unique hominid, an archaic hominid out of Africa, out of sub-Saharan Africa, and that it had interbred with other hominids, such as the Denisovian, the Yeren, or the Denisovian, the Neanderthal, and Homo sapiens. And in those populations, we now have the Yeti, which would have been a interbreeding between the Denisovian and this archaic Muke7E progenitor. So we're seeing a consistent DNA history of when this introgressions were taking place. What is interesting to me is here in modern times now, through Zana's DNA, we can show that there was a modern introduction of this archaic DNA from sub-Saharan Africa. We're trying to identify it today and having additional environmental DNA studies and going back and studying people that carry that Muke 7E. I think that's what you're going to see. You'll see an algorithm developed from this, and we'll be able to see environmental DNA studies, which is where they'll be able to pull it out of the water, because it is this sticky consistency that is in all of our mucus. This will be unique because it's an outlier. The Muke 7E will be something that we could have a blue colored marker, and that would be able to identify that if we took it out of environmental DNA, such as the Mississippi River or the Missouri River behind me, the different creeks that flow through habitat where these hominids live. That would be shed in that water, and it would also be in if they had been eating or their tree and stick structures. It could also be a part of the sticky substance that is sometimes found in residue with their fingerprints. That may also carry remnant DNA, and that DNA might point also theoretically to Muke 7E. I believe this is the genetic marker, and this is what's going to be used in the future to study these hominids in places such as the Omaha Res, where I'm at today. So I hope I simplified it a little bit more when it comes to our own DNA and how people do have this mucus system, and within that it carries all of our DNA. And within that DNA, there was an outlier found in sub-Saharan Africans. And within that, we have identified Muke 7E, and we're able to trace it to sub-Saharan African DNA to Zana. So more studies will need to be done, but I believe this is absolutely the genetic marker that will be used in the future, and it also proves their existence of these archaic hominids today throughout the world. So this one progenitor out of sub-Saharan Africa DNA would be in the Muke 7E, would be in the Yeti, the Yeren of China, the Yahweh of Australia, and the Sasquatch of the U.S. Other hominids around the world will carry that DNA, and that will be the marker from this distinct individual archaic hominid that carries the Muke 7E. This is Richard Soule in the land of the giants, res squatching, and the Knox Giga study.
So wait, you have to go back another step before that, though, because the Denisovans are they inbred with the modern humans in that area, which gave them the capacity to be at higher altitudes and be a lot more robust and functional at those higher altitudes. So what you're basically saying is that probably it was the Yetis mating with the Denisovans first, and then the Denisovan hybrids mating with the humans second.
Yeah, they were all interacting. The progenitor of the Muke 7E is an ancient being. It predates Neanderthal, Homo sapiens. It predates all of the other hominids, I believe. It probably was if you look at giant footprints next to dinosaurs, you find that are human shaped. I believe that's what this being is. I believe it was one of these ancient hominids, and it would carry this Muke 7E, this outlier DNA. And so
it kind of makes sense if it went in that order too, because from what we know about the Denisovan remains that we've recovered so far, they were huge. Yes. And it's a lot more likely that one of them would somehow end up being hybridized with class 3 Yeti, which are also huge, than with a teeny little Sherpa doing it, if you know what I mean.
Yes, yeah. And but we will see these variations in the DNA, and that's my point is that's what's mudding up the science right now and why it's difficult to get DNA for these beans. But having a outlier genetic marker and being able to do eDNA, and if you went into a stream, a mountain stream there in Montana, and you tested environmental DNA of that water, and it had Muke, you had a fluorescent marker that would change color, and it changed to like blue color if there was Muke 7E in it, then you would know that these beans are present there. And there is ability to do science with that.
So wait, now let's clarify here again. At this point, if you're going around taking eDNA samples randomly in nature, you should not find Muke 7E anywhere in them.
Well, if you do find it, then there is this ancient progenitor in those woods.
Right. But so far as we know, there are no modern known creatures running around.
There's no other than these sub-Saharan African people that carry the latent DNA of Muke 7E, and that the probability of that would be very low, and what they would be carrying would be a lot less than what a current progenitor of it would have. They would have a lot more. It would be a different amount of it. It would be much more in the DNA. So it's an outlier that we can use to help identify these beans, and the differences of them compared to us is so little that you have to have something like this to be able to identify them. There has to be an outlier that is interchangeable with them, and I believe this is it. So we'll see more of that. We will see this. We don't have any DNA kits right now to do eDNA, but I think it would be a valuable tool to develop at some point. And I just wanted to bring this up because of Svante, the work that Svante Pablo had done has really kind of set the stage for the work that I proposed. And he was basically saying these beings were interbreeding, that they were interacting and interbreeding, and Neanderthal and Denisovian were interbreeding, and they had offspring, and they weren't just hybrids, they were able to breed and have offspring, and that's what we have from this. So, and he did all that just through this paleogenome, through the bones that they had. So it's fascinating work, and the science is leading us to really cutting edge things. And that's why I'm so excited still about Muke 7E, because I proposed it in 2018. That to me, this validated that the theory that I proposed, that they were interbreeding and that they would carry this ancient admixture of Muke 7E along with Denisovian interbreeding and Neanderthal interbreeding and Homo sapiens. You're going to see an admixture of all that in the Yeti, the Yawen, the Yahweh, and the Yeren, and the Sasquatch. You're going to see that. And I think it's absolutely fascinating because this continues to be proven true. It's just, time will tell how long it's going to take for us to catch up with that. But I wanted to bring that up because I thought it was important. And, today we really are here to talk about the Eyeglow, something that we want to.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption, folks. We had some minor technical problems. Had to kill a couple gremlins. Hopefully they're all dead and we're back again. So we're on to the Eyeglow now. This is the main thing we were here to talk about, other than the updates of the eDNA thing, which is like super cool. Is there anybody on the horizon there that's planning on making any test kits for that? That would sure be handy to know.
Environmental DNA is still kind of in the infant stage yet, I think, for something like this, but it's absolutely a possibility. If the funding was there, it could be done.
You would think that would be handy just for finding, for forestry people and stuff that are tracking rare animals that are move around a lot, wolverines, stuff like that. We're
Yeah,
not necessarily going to be able to spot them, even mountain lions, but if they're in the area, they would leave environmental DNA, of course.
yeah, and that is one of the applications that they believe it will be used for, and they've used it for like finches and stuff like that. So they've, wildlife is absolutely something that they're looking at. So putting together a kit like that, if the funding was there, would be awesome for this sort of research. But I don't think we don't have anybody with the cash flow that is going to, want to take that on right now. If there is, then I would love to hear from them. That would be great.
Just in case you're listening, Elon.
Yeah, this would be your time to segue in with your billions of dollars. And
Not like it would take that much.
Yeah, a fraction of that would work for us in this situation. So.
Yeah. Then you'd have another feather in your cap. You helped with the DNA science that proved that they're still running around out there, stealing chickens and peeking in windows.
Yeah, it would be historical, absolutely, to be able to do that and have kits out there that you could send all over the world. That would be amazing, and we would have a central database for that information. It would be incredible for science, and it would be hard to argue they didn't exist at that point.
Pretty much impossible, yeah.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be any more arguing going on at that point. So, yeah, one of the things that comes up occasionally, especially amongst the senior researchers, is where they see these strange phenomena known as eyeglow. And just to make it clear to all the casual listeners out there, we're not talking about the reflectivity of light off of a glossy eye or anything like that. We're not talking about your headlights or your flashlight shining off of a deer's eye and making it glow, although there's commonly a lot of animals that can do that. We're talking about these beings being able to actually internally generate light and make their eyes glow. And so that's what we mean by eye glow. And we're here with Rich specifically tonight to address the science that's been able to be cobbled together on this subject, which is, again, why I love having Rich on the show, because he is out there in the field. He sees them doing weird paranormal things, and then he starts doing the research to see if there's some way to actually explain this with what we know as modern science. And so it's always wonderful to get his findings and research on the subject. So take the floor, Rich.
Yeah, well, this is a subject that really caught my attention. It would have been over 10 years ago when I first started experiencing this phenomena, and I had the good fortune of attending an expedition in Iowa that was put on by Steve Moon at that time, and one of the presenters there was Dr. Tom Rue, who was a physicist, and the subject of bioluminescence and eyeglow was his presentation. And we were at Volga State Park, which is up in the Subterranean escarpments of northeast Iowa at that time, and it was just kind of a surreal experience for me because Dr. Rue had brought whale recordings, and he had them on top of his vehicle and was playing whale recordings, like blue whale sounds. And we were one of the gentlemen attending, my friend Paul, we were walking a 2-track road along a river, the Volga River, and about midnight, something like that, and we started seeing this eye glow, and it was a surreal experience because we had a presentation on it, and we were witnessing. It was almost on cue. So I had been fortunate enough to see eye glow many hundreds of times in the field, which I'm sure some people find that hard to believe, but really, after all the research I've been doing, it's something that I've seen probably more than anything. And I've seen a ton tree structures and those sorts of things, and have documented those. But the eyeglow phenomenon is something that really didn't have a whole lot of attention, and a lot of people tended to poo-poo it and say it was just like you were saying, it was eye shine. And a lot of people still, I think, incorrectly use the term, and they associate it to these hominids. They use the term eye shine, and it's not eye shine.
Mm-hmm.
The eye shine in other animals in the woods. This is
now, before you go on, I could say that, first of all, I have seen eye shine, both kinds, where just the starlight is glinting off of their nice glossy eyeball when they're sitting in the woods 20 feet away from you watching you. And also the other kind where you actually get some sort of an object that is forcing light in their direction, let's say flashlight, car headlight, whatever, and you get the reflectivity of their eyes coming back at you. But of all the tons of times I've been around them, I've never seen eye glow yet. Never, ever.
Yeah, and that's interesting. But one of the things is that when we were doing this research, we would go into the woods in complete darkness. We didn't have any light. And most people,
and that's probably why you've experienced this so much, because where we do research at, the idea of walking around in the dark where there's grizzlies and big mountain lions, it's really not a good idea. So we tend to not do any night research. We just stay at camp and let them come visit us.
Yeah, and this is the kind of the crux of it, is that we would hike an area during the day, so we had a good idea of what the terrain is, but we would go completely dark. After 30 minutes, your eyes adjust and do glean some ambient light, and you are able, in most situations, to ambulate through and traverse areas that
albeit perhaps not quietly.
Not quietly. You do still draw attention to yourselves, but we have caught some off guard. One of the experiences we had is one came off of we were on a 2-track, just a single road, walking in the middle of the night with no lights at all, just walking in the dark. And one stepped out of, this was a Yellow River State Forest, one stepped out of the river bed onto the 2-track, turned and looked at us, and its eyes got really big and bright. And it then realized we were standing there in the darkness, and it turned and went straight up a vertical incline and just disappeared. But it was probably 15 yards in front of me, and it was absolutely, it was, I believe, shocked, and we were shocked at the same time. But it was so cool. I mean, that was just an awesome experience.
How big do you estimate he was?
How big?
Yeah.
How tall?
Yeah.
He was at least 9 feet. He was big. He was very. And his eyes,
that's a big boy.
Yeah, and his and here's the difference when we're talking about Eyeglow. You'll see, I've seen them standing underneath a tree with leaves in the tree. Well, the illumination of their eyes are lighting up the leaves in the tree. Okay, so that's not eye shine. That's what the term is we're using, eye glow. And so tonight I wanted to kind of talk about the mechanism of it. You interviewed Sibylla Irwin not too far back, a month or so ago, and I went back and watched the video that she had made. She had a interview with a gentleman from British Columbia who had a face-to-face sighting back in the 70s. And one of the things I love about Sibylla is that in the absence of photographic evidence, she is able to take an artistic rendering of somebody's experience and really capture what that was for that person. And just similar to what a police artist would do in a crime scene. And if there was a sketch artist to kind of draw the face of the person who committed the crime, she can do that in terms of the Sasquatch.
And in ridiculous detail. And she has a lot more time to spend with them. So she gets them exactly like what they remembered, not just close.
Yes. And so she did an excellent rendition of Eyeglow. And in that experience that she was documenting, the gentleman, it was in the 70s, and I believe this, the two Sasquatch that were interacting with him were communicating. They were communicating their abilities of things they could do, and they were showing him that. And you people should go back and watch that because just a fascinating interview. But what I gleaned from it significantly was the Eyeglow. One of the things that caught my attention is that when he was the adult, the gentleman who was in the cabin and just looking through a window, he rolled his eyes up into his head and showed the sclera of his eyes and showed this light shining out of his sclera. And I found that absolutely significant because back in 2012, that's exactly what Dr. Rue had described. So let me kind of back up and let's look at the lens of this Eyeglow and the eyes of a physicist, Dr. Rue, who passed away, I believe, in 2015. He's no longer with us, but
he was a real physicist, and if you try and contradict him, you'll rue the day you did. Sorry, couldn't resist.
Yeah. So this is a very scientific explanation of what Eyeglow is and what the mechanism is. And essentially, what he explained is in deep sea fish, there are photophores, which are light emitting organs. And these photophores allow for these deep sea sea life to either have searchlights or to use them as bait, but they absolutely are illuminating their surroundings in complete and utter darkness. And we know that because we've documented that. So his suggestion is that these photophores are the organs within the sclera of these hominids, and they are projecting this light out. And so what he was saying is there would be because one of the things with Eyeglow also is that you see different colors of their eye glow. We've seen blue and red, amber, kind of a greenish color. There's, I believe, all of the primary light spectrum they can emit those lights, and that again is almost a whole science in itself, trying to figure out what they're communicating with that. But we do know when we've seen the red.
Well, you've actually seen them change Eyeglow color in real time, so they can actually somehow control what color is coming out of their eyes. And the other thing that's brought up a lot is when you see red Eyeglow, it's probably an angry Sasquatch, but could be something else. But red Eyeglow, bad, time to leave.
Yeah, that's generally they're a little perturbed with what's going on. We had one throw a stick at our tent, and he was standing at the road, and his eyes were glowing red. So it was and we were probably in an area that this was Camp Hard Knocks, which we've talked about this before, but I do think I know there's a spring there, so they're accessing water, but there may be a portal in that area too. So there's other things that are going on that they really were not happy we were there at that time. So, but I've seen all of those colors, amber, seen that a lot, and you know what you'll see is them peeking around trees many times. And so that's why a lot of people who haven't seen it, you have to kind of have an eye for it and get used to being out in the dark, for one thing, in the woods. But you also kind of have to have this sense of looking for this this peeking behavior that they do. And once you get used to looking for that in the woods, you will recognize that, and it'll blow your mind the first time you ever see it yourself. So if you come to Nebraska, I will absolutely get you out in the woods, and you will see some Eyeglow.
Right on.
Make sure you do.
I'll have Ashton the Viking with me too.
Getting back to this mechanism, let's get into science. So what Dr. Rue proposed is that there would be these lens cells that would be able to change colors. You'd have a layer of those that would be projecting, and then the photophores would be projecting through them. Behind that, you would have cells that are called chromatophores, and those would be projecting light away from the iris or going back into the eye. So you'd have a series of cells that would be layered, and then you'd have these light emitting organs called photophores that would be shining light through those filter cells. And then also you'd have those chromatophore cells that would be focusing the light away from going back into like the
right, because otherwise it'd be blinding themselves with their own headlights.
Yeah. So, and there's good reason to believe that the more we photograph this sort of Eyeglow, the more we'll understand if it's many of these photophores or if it's just a few of them. But the more photographic evidence we can get of Eyeglow will help us understand a little bit more of them. Now, what's interesting, Dr. Rue proposed that, and then here's the other side of what is bioluminescence. So you've got these photophores, these organs that are emitting light out of the sclera. Within that, there is a chemical reaction, and the two chemicals of luciferin and luciferase with oxygen, oxidization of these two chemicals creates bioluminescence, and we see that in nature. So this bioluminescent chemical within the photophore generating the light emitting organ is going to create light, and that's what's going to, that's the essential chemical reaction that's taking place along with the light emitting organ that's actually projecting the light out. So these are, again, it might be hard for people to comprehend this, but this is science. This isn't, we're not making this up. This is actually a scientific explanation of how this is taking place, because the precedent is already in nature in deep sea life. Now, it also, to me, harkens back to, these are ancient creatures. These are beings that have an ancient vestige of this that still exists today. And they're able to live in caves, they're able to live underground, they're able to traverse at night. And that's one of the reasons why I used the term Nox gigas, was they're the night giants. Yeah. And it was a lot of that, my experience with the Eyeglow, that I used that term. I thought that was significant to do that. So,
you know, one thing, just to cut in here for a minute, this goes a long way to explaining they're living in cave subterranean behavior, and yet they don't have like lamps or torches or flashlights or anything. How are they navigating through these lightless depths? Well, apparently that's how.
They're doing it the same way these deep sea fish are using it for searchlights. They're using it for bait. This is an ancient, and the deep sea life is absolutely pitch black down there. Mm-hmm. So this bioluminescence using these photophores is an ancient vestige. I absolutely believe that this is from a period that is like Pangea or something, coming from a really long time ago. So I wanted to kind of set that up. Now, what's interesting, Steve Moon in Iowa, he's with Lowlands Bigfoot, and his website is worth checking out. He's written a lot of this information about Tom. Him and Tom had interacted a good deal. And this information that I'm actually giving you was information that Steve had written about. I saw the actual presentation in October of 2012 that Dr. Rue had presented on this. And so I've got to thank Steve for documenting all this so that we have it today to share, because it's absolutely a piece of the puzzle that once you get out and see this sort of thing, you really get hooked on the Eyeglow part of it. It's just absolutely fascinating.
And let me back you up on something else that I personally know from personal experience, because I personally have been there. Northeast Iowa and the area right across the border in Wisconsin, all the way along that strip, there's a lot of Bigfoot in there.
Yes,
there's no shortage of Bigfoot in there.
It is, and they're very active, and they do traverse at night, and you will see this sort of Eyeglow there. Yeah, the Mississippi River has these little islands that they swim in the river, and they get on those islands, and they're also doing subterranean. The Solarian escarpments have cave systems and freshwater springs, so it's absolutely like the karst type system that I've talked about before. And that's the other reason, again, why all this fits so beautifully for me, is the Eyeglow and to be able to traverse subterranean environments.
The karst systems, like you brought up in previous shows, they're vast subterranean freeways and living spaces.
Yeah, we did a whole show on this, the subterranean Bigfoot, so people could go back and watch all that. But this mechanism...
I'll put a link in the doodly-doop down below.
So what's happened since 2012 is there has been some photographs of these. And when I talked to Steve about this, because I reached out to him after talking to Sibylla and watching that, the Scalara scene that she has of this Bigfoot demonstrating their abilities, absolutely demonstrating that this light is shining out of this Scalara. I went back, made some comments. I talked to Steve, I talked to Sibylla, and Sibylla has generously allowed us to use her artistic renderings of these beings. So I'm thankful for her and want to thank her publicly here. So we'll be showing those with what we're talking about tonight. But one of the things that I got from Steve is he said that the Scalara, what he has found through the photography that he's done of Eyeglow is that it's coming out of the iris. And so I was like, really? Because Dr. Rue had said it was going to be the Scalara.
Wow, yeah, that's really bizarre.
But it makes sense now because I have seen them focus this. I've seen them focus it like an LED light, and it's literally like a projector. They're projecting this light out. So I've absolutely seen that. We have photographs of it. So that does make sense that it's in the iris also. I think it's in the Scalara and the iris. I think they have photophores in both of those, and they're using them in different ways to see. And they're able to focus on things, and they're also able to project light and communication, like signaling, similar to what these deep sea fish do. So there's communication.
Oh, those dirty cheaters. Are you saying they're like sending Morse code messages with eye blinks at night?
They are. They're communicating with those colors also. And so that's another whole thing to study. It just opens up a whole new area. And the more we've learned about this, the more we're understanding that, this is a part of nature that they're utilizing, but it's very different. It's different from what we have. And that's why they're able to do all these things at night and live. Homo sapiens, we're the people of the daylight, and they are, they run around during the day, but they're largely able to do things at night and be concealed in the environments that they have. And that's, again, one of the reasons that they've been able to remain recluse, is that they can traverse through areas that we're simply not willing to do. And in Montana, you don't want to run around in the dark with bears out there. So they got that going for them.
Yeah, when you're about to bump into a 1,000-pound snoozing grizzly, maybe, and they walk around in the dark too, so kind of dangerous. Yeah.
So this oxygen is going to be controlled, and the luciferin and luciferase by the circulatory system, and then the nervous system is probably also going to play a part in some of the projecting of the ability to generate this and project that. So you'll probably have a combination of the nervous system and the circulatory system utilizing the mechanisms that we're talking about to generate Eyeglow.
I've always wondered if they're, you know, you always hear about them being either angry or startled when you get red Eyeglow out of them. And I always wondered if that was a result of their blood pressure abruptly going up, and that's what was making the eye color switch to red invariably.
It's, you know, that's interesting. I think it more has to do with these filtering that is going on, and them consciously being able to change those colors, and either the circulatory system or their nervous system. They can do these things just like we can focus looking away or near, and they have to change those. We've seen them stand up, you know, be one color and stand up, and then, you know, be it. One of the things that I was going to bring up is that we had recently the Sitanga movie came out about Sasquatching, Spirits and Faith, and one of the producers that was up there, RPG, he was with me out in near Camp Hard Knocks and was able to see this. And so in that movie, he talks about it. And so it was fascinating to be able to take somebody like him and have him in that environment, talk about it, and then have him actually see it. And in his experience, he saw one about 4 or 5 feet, and then stand up and move another 4 or 5 feet and stand about 8 feet, and they changed colors, and it blew him away. He was absolutely blown away by it. It was pretty cool to have.
Do you think anything with the color shifting has to do with perspective and angle of the viewer? Because I've been able to ascertain that when you've got a projected light source on them and you're actually getting eye shine, that it does vary depending on the angle that the light's hitting it at.
Yeah, it's possible some of that is taking place because the light that I've seen when it's just projecting out typically is amber or white. But I think also just, again, to the basic science of this lens, they're able to most likely change these colors, and you're going to see it. I have a picture from Sasquatching that I'll have you show people here, and Barry had taken it in 2015, and it shows 2 different Sasquatches with 2 different colors of lights, and the lights are kind of blurry because they're moving. So it's really cool. You can see
there's something they're moving. Yeah,
they're moving. The lights are moving too. So it's pretty cool. And so the thing is with this, it's a phenomena that you have to observe. For one thing, you have to see it yourself to fully comprehend the difference in what Eyeglow is compared to eye shine. But having this science to kind of explain it, I think validates the significance of it, because we as researchers are able to identify them in the woods now by their eyes, by their ability to have by their glowing eyes. And there's behaviors within that being able to study that is going to be interesting to learn more in the future. One of the funny things that I talked to Derek, and he takes his kids out on like hayrack rides out into the woods, and he was telling me they taken so many pictures of the Eyeglow that the kids delete them off their phone unless they're a new color that they haven't seen. So we've got children on the res documenting these things, and they're deleting evidence. But I thought that was funny. So it's going back to this. I really thought it was interesting to have to kind of tie all this together, because Sibylla had done such a great job with her artistic rendering of it, that I just thought, this absolutely ties into what Dr. Rue was saying. And one of the things that I've talked about in the past in this research is the concept that I call quantum entanglement that we experience. And I had to think back in my own life, was there other times that I may have experienced this in the woods? And I absolutely did. Back in 1978, my dad was living in Elgin, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. And his home was in like probably 60 or 70 acres of woods. He was back in the woods. And it was modern architecture, so it had all these windows, that like floor to ceiling windows, kind of a Frank Lloyd Wright type.
Yeah, so Bigfoot can spy on you extra good.
They would come right up. And I remember I was standing at the kitchen, and there was a window about 2 feet by probably 14 feet long in the kitchen. And I was looking out this window, and I could see right at the end of where the woods began, there were eyes. There were 3 sets of eyes at different heights. And I'm just sitting there looking at it, and I asked my dad, I'm like, Dad, come over here, look at this. What is this? And this is 1978. So, at that, I was probably 12 or 13, I think, given the time frame. And, your father at that point, he's pretty much the judge of everything, and you're going to
yeah.
Yes. And his immediate response was, those are owls. Those are owls. And I'm looking at it, and this is kind of one of the first time I kind of questioned my dad looking back. I'm like, I don't know if those are owls. Because I'd been out in the woods catching crayfish, like this creek that went through there, and I had that uneasy feeling earlier in the day, where something's watching you, and they probably didn't like taking their crayfish out of the. I was catching them. I'd put like a little coffee can and put my hand in front of down in the stream, and the crayfish would shoot back in it, and I'd catch them. So I was doing that all day. I don't know. We caught hundreds of them, and they probably weren't too happy about that looking back at it. But
so you were out there raiding their refrigerator. That's why they were
their supply. Although there was way more than the few that we did take out of there. But just thinking back, having some intuition and thinking back at that whole experience, and this is why I talk about this kind of quantum entanglement, because you fast forward to 2012, where I get this experiences now, and I get some science behind it and start learning that these are actual Bigfoot that are doing this. And I'm able, so you have real experiences in real time, also kind of caught in a historical perspective. And one way I like to look at it, instead of just linear time that we think of things, I like to kind of look at it as a way that if you were to look at something almost in a kaleidoscope or look down in it, the time may, instead of linear, the time may be more in a way that would more like a kaleidoscope that you would look through, and experiences that we have are connected in this kind of quantum entanglement. And the things that we're experiencing now are still kind of a part of those things that we had in the past, and also experiences that we're going to have in the present. So in the future, that there's this different way to look at time rather than linear time, the way we look at it. And that may be a little abstract for our viewers, but I just thought it was kind of cool to kind of tie that quantum entanglement into it, because you get these experiences. The more you're doing this research, you find yourself scratching your head and looking back. Now, I saw something like this 5 years ago, or 7 years ago, or 10 years ago. And now this all makes sense to me now. It all kind of comes together. And that is very common from other researchers that I talk to, that they have these experiences that they're finally able to tie it in real time in the present. And so I think that's just kind of cool that, you know, this is another kind of phenomena when you start looking into the metaphysical side of these beings, that there are interactions that we have that are significant that we may not really understand at all until a future date, and then it does kind of all make sense in that context. So that was kind of a cool experience. I didn't think up until that point that I started studying Eyeglow that my experience back in 1978 was a Bigfoot. I had a sense of it. I absolutely did believe that back then.
Exactly. That comes up a lot too, and especially with the people that seem to be really good at this and able to get close to them and get pictures of them and all that kind of stuff. Maybe they've only been at it for a few years, but they start learning a lot about the subject, and then they start flipping back through their mental records and they start going, oh my God, I've been around these things, you know, fill in the blank, dozens of times and had no idea what the hell was going on.
Yes, we were oblivious to them, but they've always known us. They've known who you are, and they absolutely have a sense of if you have experienced them and you've been around them, they know that. It's like you either have an aura or something about you, or there's something.
Well, the natives say basically they mark you after you've gotten away with seeing them, and they're okay with it. They just mark you. And then every time you go in the woods, all the Sasquatch apparently within 50 miles know you're there. And it's okay to mess with you because you've seen them before.
Yeah, and that's absolutely possible. There's more to it than I totally understand. But I do see this kind of this interaction and this quantum entanglement that does get carried through in your life when you do this research long enough. And I absolutely agree with the other researchers you're talking about, that this was something from our childhood, literally experiences we had when we were children. And again, it's not necessarily linear time, I don't think. I think it's a different way of looking at time.
Well, it may be the way they experience time too, that they have, you know, there's certain humans that they want to have some kind of contact with. And, you know, they can go back to when you're a kid and go, okay, let's start watching them and keep an eye on them until it gets up to this point in the timeline where we actually want to deal with them.
Yeah. If they're jumping through portals and using these ley lines and have the ability to do that, who's to say they're not able to do some sort of time travel in a way that is not just linear time, but it's connected through past, present, and future altogether.
Well, they don't even, you know, not even saying that they're physically going through a portal or something to go back in time. They can mind speak. You can mind speak over any distance. And how do we know that the really well-trained ones can't mind speak forward or backward in time?
Mm-hmm. It's that quantum entanglement, and that's something once you set an atom in motion and it's in sync with another one, it doesn't matter how far away it is, it's going to stay entangled with it. So it's absolutely science is catching up with some of this stuff. It's fascinating that these beings that we consider archaic beings and a lot of people believe that they're not intelligent, but they have these abilities that challenge our science and have us up until recent times we didn't even have any explanation scientifically. So it's fascinating to me. I just kind of chuckle to myself when I start doing some research on this, that 20 years ago they wouldn't have been able to understand some of these concepts.
So make sure that you're kind to everyone. Safety first, last, and always. Pay it forward.
Don't be mean to people if you don't have to be. Don't flip off the mountain giant. Don't poke Dogman with a stick. Don't punt the puck, would you? And for God's sake, whatever you do, do not hug the Wookiee.